Why not start with an MVP? First, I'd like to warn you that MVP is an overloaded term with many different definitions. Some people define an MVP as the first iteration of a working product, while others define it more loosely as anything that helps you learn from customers, which could include things like prototypes and landing pages. I subscribe to the more strict MVP as the first iteration of a working product definition, which is what I'm going to use in this video. But as you'll see shortly, my advice for not starting with an MVP applies equally just the same to all these other definitions. The premise behind starting with an MVP is to avoid wasting precious months or years building a perfect product at the risk of building a much larger product that nobody wants. The logic goes something like this. Rush to build and launch something quickly and then use customer feedback to iterate and refine from there. So what's wrong with this approach? This approach used to work at a time when barriers to entry were higher and customers had fewer product choices. Going back a decade, you could afford to give customers a half-baked alpha or beta and then iterate with them to create something better. But this no longer works. It no longer works because the cost of building new products is at an all-time low, which means that customers today have many more product choices competing for the same job. When they encounter a half-baked MVP that doesn't immediately deliver value, they don't turn into early adopters or beta customers. They ghost you and switch to another product entirely. Without direct customer feedback, you're left guessing at how to fix your MVP. You try one feature after another in search of the mythical killer feature, which after a while feels like throwing spaghetti on the wall to see what sticks. Now sure, if you throw enough spaghetti on the wall, you can sometimes get lucky, and you've probably heard of stories like Groupon that brute forced their way to an idea that worked. But for every one of these stories, there are far more startups that simply ran out of resources.